Okay, so this will be a one and only take just for myself to actually see of how bad it would turn out, or maybe even not, we will see. Because it actually also turns out I'm not always right. Because I specifically asked for both versions of the Pro 7. The one with the Helio P25 and the one with the X30. Because what I expected myself to tell you now would have been the following. If you want to save some money, just get the P25 version because it's pretty much the same. A little bit, some compromise here and there, but the value is better. Well, that's not quite the fact or the case, but I'll tell you later on what I mean. So, first of all, let's get into one thing. This, the gold one, is the P25 version, and the black one is the X30 version. And I would say let's start off with a size comparison. Here, for example, the Xiaomi Mi 6, 5.15 inches against 5.2 inches, as you can see. The Mi is a little bit shorter, but as you can see here in terms of width, pretty much the same and just a little bit different size. Now here, kind of the evil twin, not really evil, but as you can see, they are super similar. In terms of size actually also because, yes, the Zook Z2 Pro is shorter. In terms of width, actually a little bit less, but therefore a little bit thicker. But it feels completely different in the hand. But I'm gonna say the following. Both are pretty much the same in most aspects, and that's why I won't cover both, just the differences. So let's get into this because we can show off the color a little bit different here. So first of all, build quality, absolutely great. Super solid, as you can see here. Also nice tactile and audio feedback, and it just feels great in the hand. So solid, so premium. Also nicely curved here on the sides. Also nice on the back, great material, but I have to say this is one of the more slippery phones that I've used, definitely above average, because I had quite some trouble having it on the hand. The good thing is though, since it is still quite compact, as you can see here with the bezels, and really still 5.2 inches, yes, and therefore it can still be managed to be held quite securely in the hand nonetheless. I will get into that screen later on in the software part, because otherwise buttons, they are placed very well, and the fingerprint reader, you have to actually push it to get activated, but it is a very fast one. So as you can see, very reliable and quite good. So I still give it a very good because, especially for one thing, it has a one control mechanism, because if you just tap it, it is back. If you press it, is home, and if you swipe from either the right or left side here, you get actually to the recent apps. And I think this is actually such a convenient solution because this feels so natural, just swiping up and then pressing the button, and you just need one button. Okay, you could have achieved the same with buttons as well, but this, yeah, I like this because you only have to use kind of like one half of the phone. You don't have to stretch your fingers, and this is definitely something I know to appreciate. Other than that, the front, as you can see here, pretty much flat, but a super nice smooth transition. For some reason though, I noticed that the P25 version has a little bit of a noticeable difference because it doesn't feel quite as round, but the rest is otherwise completely the same. Because, of course, the dual cam with the flash, of course, also the screen. Here we have the microphone, SD card and SIM card tray, USB Type-C, headphone jack, microphone, and the speaker on the left. We have a notification LED. If I'm not wrong, if I am, I will tell you with an annotation because my brain just doesn't work very good. Okay, I'd say let's get into the display because let's check one thing. Display and brightness. We have, as you can see here, the standard options. We can change the color temperature, which is very nice, but I actually did not need it to at all. And of course, here we have also adaptive, standard, photo, and dynamic modes. As you can see, they changed it quite nice. And since this is an AMOLED display, you will get amazing blacks, great colors. And it's actually not over the top saturated, which is something really nice. And you could just change it to something more realistic if you want to, but I liked adaptive as it is. It was a very pleasing display. With 590 lux. For an AMOLED display, this is still good in terms of sunlight readability. The white was absolutely nicely placed. Black, pretty much perfect, great contrast. Colors look fine. It's not one of these Samsung over crazy saturated ones. Definitely, absolutely lovely display. Just because of the 1080p resolution, I won't give it more than a very good because I just said my limit for any 1080p display is pretty much very good. And that's why I would say let's get to the speaker. Yeah, the position is not that great, at least if you are holding it with your right hand and maybe supporting it with your pinky as I usually do. Because otherwise the speaker is absolutely nice because the volume is actually quite loud. It sounds totally nicely balanced. Not super rich, but definitely not thin at all. Good balance. I like the sound and you have to reflect it, and it's a little bit easier to block it than some phones that have the speaker on the right side, but just for that. Now in terms of the headphone jack, this one is really good, and I almost gave it even a very good because it's very loud, clean, good sound, but not quite a very good because I would have liked then to have kind of a system-wide equalizer. Now, what about to say in terms of performance? And there is a difference between the two, but what I also have to mention is the following. If you go into battery mode, there is this option. As you can see, performance mode, and we have prioritized performance in display. And I think there is even another option there is another way where you can actually change the performance mode. This you need a little bit of some different access point, but I'm not quite sure where this was because I accessed that through Nova Launcher, but it is possible. I did not even bother to use the normal mode because why not? I always want maximum performance, and that's what I got. So as you can see here, app launch times are absolutely fine. It's not crazy fast, but it is on a pretty much flagship level, after all, on the X30 version. Now what about the P25 version? Now I'm gonna say the following. The P25 version, this by the way, now would be actually possible. Here you can see, here we have the normal mode and the high performance mode, because this is running Nova. But app launch times are pretty much the same. I didn't really notice any difference, but where I noticed a little bit of a difference is the following. Yes, the X30 version is a little bit smoother. It is a little bit faster, and it is just a little bit better in overall. But it's not much. And if it would have been just for that, I would have actually said, just stick with the P25 version. It's totally enough because both perform great. But there is a little bit of a difference after all, and I will give this one an almost great because it is very close to a flagship level. Because as you can see, nice and smooth. Some phones feel a little bit more lightweight, sometimes have a little bit more less lag, because this has really slight amounts of lag during scrolling and changing apps, but even here multitasking 4 gigs of RAM is still way more than enough, so don't worry about that. And it is a really fluid, consistent performer, and the P25 version is not really anything behind, because as you can see, I doubt anyone would really notice a difference without having both side by side all the time. What I've noticed, the P25 version feels a little bit heavier while dragging, so it can't quite scroll as fast as the X30 version does. So this one feels a little bit heavier, not quite as lightweight as I like to call it. But other than that, it's just about as good in terms of multitasking, and everything runs just fine. But there is a difference, not a huge one, and one that I actually would say it's not enough to make the deciding factor, but still. The X30 version is better. I won't go into gaming, just real quick. P25 totally fine. It's a little bit maybe above Snapdragon 625, where this one is at around Snapdragon 820 and 21, where it is in general, because I would say this is above a 625, and this one is 820, 821 version, but in some ways it's pretty much a flagship still, because the 821, if properly optimized, which both of these are, especially for a P25, both do a super nice job. Now, battery is the big issue for me. I just tested the charging time on the P25 version, which was about 1 hour and 25, which is super great. Both above average in terms of, I mean better than average of course, in terms of YouTube time, but the issue is the battery life. I can't really properly judge it, because I would have said about 7.5 hours, and that's why I won't even list the values this time. About 7.5 hours on mobile and Wi-Fi on the X30 version, and maybe half an hour more on the P25 version. But the issue was mobile data. Here I had severe issues, or I mean just things that weirded me out, and that's why I can't properly judge it, and that's why I won't point out the value. So maybe check some other reviews just for the battery life, because what I had is, at first it always looked like solid 5 hours, but later on towards the end of the cycle I was looking at around maybe 4 hours, and here sometimes 3 to 3.5 hours. So I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Especially the P25 version had a lot of trouble while not being used in standby drain, and I don't know, sometimes it just felt like I lost 10% but didn't notice it, but in use it felt fine, and that's why I think something was just off. I can't really narrow it down, because it was not a standby drain, especially on Wi-Fi. Very good, and usually when I checked it, it was good on mobile data as well, but something was off. So if I would maybe have to expect a value just from my experience, I would say this like 5 hours, maybe even 5.5 if things go right. And this like 4.5 still at least, even though I would actually expect the P25 version to be better. For some reason, maybe it was the reception. I can't really say because the setup was the same on both. So I'm a little bit disappointed that I can't give you a definite answer this time, but because I have not experienced this in this way, because other phones usually behave more easy to judge for me. But yeah, that's where I'm gonna leave it. Now, I want to mention just one thing when I'm already talking about the software. I had some issues and it hasn't happened yet with the X30 version, but just on my unit it has to be the case. The screen just froze. The unit actually, if I would have pointed some things, it would have still worked, but the screen froze. But I've asked already CCT shop where I got this from. He hasn't heard of that anywhere else, and the P25 didn't have it. So I think it must be a unique thing because I tried to reset it. I'm not quite sure. It must be a defect just on this unit. Because, now, let's talk about the software. As you can see here, no app drawer. Not a problem. I kind of like the design, especially here, this quick and easy access to the recent apps. I'm not the biggest fan of side scrolling, but this time it actually works so nice that I'm okay with it. Also here, quick settings, of course, customizable. Now, what about in terms of software? What do we have here? As you can see, Android version 7.0 and their own Flyme UI. And I definitely like Flyme's UI. It's nothing really out of the box spectacular because, as you can see, wake on, notification shade, display status bar, tinted display, battery standard, what else? Personalization, we have a theming engine. It's actually quite a nice one. You can change a few more things here, as you can see. There is an easy mode, not that it really matters. Battery, Meizu, as you can see, it's not that much. So it's not a super heavy system, which is nice to see, but I have to just get into this thing. Now, the secondary display, what can it do? Actually, not a whole lot, because let's get into one thing. As you can see here, it can of course show you the weather and the time. The next thing is steps. Then the weather here specifically, once again, that's already it. What you can do is if you swipe up, you can then, as you can see here, launch the camera. And with this one, and I will get into that later, you can make next level selfies, but it just works for photos. Unfortunately, not for video, because you can get such great selfies. But the problem is, this is already it, because if we quickly check the settings just for the secondary display, as you can see here, you can enable it, double tap to wake, which I would not really recommend because so many times I actually turned it on just by having my finger somewhere up there. And then you can see you have the pedometer, the weather, yeah, and notifications. Because even notifications were quite poor, because here a little bit of a bell appears and that's it. You don't really get a quick glance of what the notification is about, not an icon, nothing. And that's a little bit sad, because otherwise I have to say I really like the software. It's not extremely feature packed, and it still feels quite lightweight. The design is maybe personal preference. I was totally fine with it. There are some minor smaller quirks maybe here and there. I can't really remember them all that well anymore since I've used the different phones for the last few days, and I simply forgot it. But this also means since I can't remember it right now anymore and I didn't really note it down, it can't be that important. So update wise, I can't judge Meizu yet because I've never used one before. So here is where I can't tell you much more. But now let's get into the cam. Okay, this is the normal selfie cam, the one on the back. And as you can see, from this distance it doesn't focus yet. But here pretty much I would say yes it does, and here as well. And I would say the front cam is really good still, because as you can see it can get some decent shots. It's not amazing, not perfect at all, but here's the thing. Now, as you can see, the big difference here, for example, this looks already really good, maybe even very good. But now this is using the main cam and then the selfie feature with the secondary display, and look at those details. Look at that sharpness, look at those colors. Amazing. Of course, from this distance it didn't quite get the focus right, but then again here, this is just, I would call this next level selfies. Yes, you could say that it does over sharpen a little bit, but I think it's not too much, because I over sharpen all my videos, so definitely I'm the wrong one to complain about that, because I like what I get here. I'm not a big selfie fan, but as you can see, the shots are absolutely top, and even inside. Tell me or show me another front-facing cam that can do this. Okay, the one here can't either, but with the selfie feature you can. Yeah, absolutely top. And I wouldn't really even bother to use the front-facing cam for selfies. Okay, video. As you can see here, the problem is that the front-facing cam just isn't the very best one because it tends to overexpose. Okay, it was extreme weird light and I had just trouble with that, so you could imagine things to look a little bit more right, but still, it's not sharp. Here you notice the over-sharpening because things feel a little bit like double conscious, and so the white balance is a little bit off, the colors are a little bit off. Yes, I totally get that, and that's why I would say let's just get into the main cam. Here you can see with the flash and without the flash. Now, low light pics are, I would say, still quite good, absolutely, because yes, maybe a little bit of grain, but otherwise, as you can see here, totally okay shots. I mean, low light cams still are something really hard to get that are really good. Now, outside, look at these details. And I really like the cam, and that's why also the selfies with the secondary screen are so great, because as you can see, it can get, okay, yeah, a dual lens, but the bokeh mode definitely does not work as good as an autofocus. You really need those, as it says actually on the display itself, 1.5 meters between the objects to get a proper focus effect, because if it gets it right, which isn't here the case, but here, for example, it looks really, really nice. So if you just find out the right way how it works, you can get really nice bokeh here as well. It doesn't always work all that well, but it can. And then the main cam, I just have to say, really nice. Super detailed, nice and sharp, maybe over sharpened, I don't care, but great pictures. Yeah, the autofocus isn't the very best one. Sometimes you have to be a little bit patient or use tap to focus. Here, for example, HDR. Once again, my PC has trouble again, as you can see. Okay, so it over brightens things a little bit. Let's try it here, and yeah, HDR is usable. Now 4K video, I gotta say I really like it. Sorry for the glare, I had a little bit of a smudge, I guess, on the lens, but one thing that you maybe noticed in the sky, that there are some vertical lines which are a little bit odd. So I don't know if they always appear, but the autofocus has a little bit of a pump. I'm just not a fan of a pumping autofocus, because as you can see, the picture, okay, no real stabilization, which would have been definitely very handy, but as you can see, the autofocus is reliable. It just has this annoying pump, especially on 4K, which many cams don't have on 4K, but the video is nice and sharp, it is smooth, and I definitely like the outcome here of the 4K video. And I would say definitely this is almost great. With a better autofocus, this would have been a great one, but still, it can produce so great. Now about the P25 version, unfortunately that one does not support 4K. And then you just get 1080p, which is just not as good. It just isn't as smooth. I mean, it is smooth, but it's just not nearly as sharp. The autofocus has the same pump. So here I would say really good, but not more. And once again, here the 4K, I just think it looks so nice. But let's just move past that, and I would say let's already get into the summary, because I think I said already enough. No, this is the wrong one here. Okay, build. Great. Nothing else to say here. Design, also great, because it is quite compact and has a top in-hand feel, very premium. The fingerprint reader, also very good, very reliable. The display, very good. Like I said, due to just being 1080p, even though super nice quality, I just can't give it a grade. The speaker, loud and good. The headphone jack is really good, almost actually even very good. Performance on the P25 version is very good, and on the X30 version even almost great, with a little bit less jittery and jagginess, or I mean a little bit lag, even though it's really minor. It would have been a great. Now the battery, like I said, I can't really properly judge that. Sorry for that. Software, very nice overall, but not flawless. There are a few minor quirks, but like I said, I can't really even remember. Now the front-facing cam, that actually is a flaw, because it's supposed to mean really good. And with the secondary screen, excellent. Not P25 and X30. That was an issue of mine. That was a mistake of mine. Now, front-facing cam, quite good. Low-light cam, also quite good. And the main cam is great. Now, video cam on the P25, here is what I meant. Really good. And on the X30, almost great, just because it has 4K, which the P25 version does not have. Value, okay, and it has to be imported. Now a few extra notes: above average slippery, but still easy to hold since quite narrow. It is really convenient with that one button control. I found that really cool, because I don't have to stretch my fingers all that much. Secondary display, extremely limited. I would really wish for some extra work here. They could add some features in, but I kind of doubt it will happen. The P25 version, like I said, no 4K video, and in general the autofocus is slightly nervous and pumping, something I don't really like so much. Then no band 20, and the P25 version is kinda pointless, which brings me already to my conclusion. Because here's the thing, The P25 version from CCT Shop is 310 euros, where this one is 360 euros. Now, what more do you get with the X30 version? Because at first I thought I would have said, you don't really make much compromises, so just save a little bit of money and get a cheaper one. But the thing is, you just pay 50 bucks more. You get double the amount of storage, so 128 in terms of 64. Then you get just a slightly better performance. You get 4K video, and for some reason in my case you even get a better battery life. So I think that all makes easily up for what you would maybe save up. So 50 bucks, that's totally nice. Now, the other thing though is 360 euros. Is this a good price for this phone? Because in some way I feel like the P25 version is kinda unnecessary. They should have just released one, because why even bother? The rest is pretty much the same. But I guess it doesn't cost much to make this extra version in case some people want it. Maybe sometimes the difference will be bigger in terms of price. But at 50 bucks, I don't see a proper reason to recommend the P25 version. The X30 version, I could. Especially if you're looking for an almost flagship level compact phone. 5.2 inches in this size, I mean in this price range, that deliver almost the flagship experience are hard to get. And then you get a camera that is great, something you also won't get in this price range, because below 400 euros you won't get a phone that feels as great, has a super nice AMOLED screen, which a lot of people prefer. Performance is top notch, super satisfying. The battery life, I would still assume, is good, at least really good. I just, from 8 hours on Wi-Fi, about what I could get, trickling it down from what I experienced is telling me it has to be fine. Something was just off on my side, but the band 20 is still missing, so for people in Germany this will be an issue. For most people otherwise though, not so much. So yeah, I get that the value for 360 for a phone that has to be imported is maybe not amazing, but the qualities are absolutely there. You have seen all the qualities like design, build, speaker, performance, especially the really good camera, which not quite flawless, but therefore amazing for selfies. Definitely makes up for a package that you won't find quite in this way for this price. So I can recommend it, yeah. The X30 version even more so. I'm not saying that it's perfect, because that's something only you have to judge. Because I always say there is no best phone. There is always no best phone for you. And if you want a compact phone with great overall qualities for this price, yeah. Not sure what else to say, so I'm just gonna finish it. If you wanna leave me a thumbs up, maybe on a subscription, do that. And otherwise, I wish you a nice day. Until next time, bye.